So I'm Dee Good. I'm with Shambhala Mountain Center, and I'm delighted today to be with Sara Avant Stover, who's a best-selling author and who is leading an upcoming retreat for Shambhala Mountain Center called Befriending Your Inner Critic with yoga, meditation, and psychology. So thank you so much for meeting with us today, Sara.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dee. It's great to be here with you and the Shambhala community.
Wonderful. And can you share a little bit about your inspiration for offering this retreat?
Sure. Well, I've been teaching at Shambhala Mountain Center for the past 10 years, usually about two retreats a year. And that's got thrown off a little bit due to COVID, but luckily we're able to do these online retreats. And this particular one is a topic that's close to my heart because a big part of my journey, my healing journey, my psycho-spiritual journey over the past 20 years, like the bulk of my adult life so far, a big part of it has been learning to work with my inner critic. And actually, there's not just one inner critic. There's a bunch of them. There's different categories of them. And initially, when I learned about working with my inner critic, I learned about kind of telling it to shut up, just being really stern with it, dominating it. And I realized, wow, that really doesn't work. That actually makes things worse. It's like adding gasoline to a fire. But as I've gotten older, I discovered a psychotherapeutic model called internal family systems, also known as IFS. And I was a recipient of that, a client of that for many years, and now I'm a practitioner myself. And in that modality, it's all about befriending these parts of ourselves and actually seeing that they hold essential aspects of who we are. And so this retreat is to help others to discover that, because also everyone that I've ever worked with, a big piece of what they've grappled with as well have been their inner critics.
Yeah, I know it's true for creators of all kind, artists, writers, and all. And what is it about the? I mean, where does the inner critic come from, and how does it hold us back?
Sure. Well, I'd say it's not just creators that have inner critics. It's all of us, and it's present. It's ever present. Usually, when we're taking risks, or even about our appearance or how we're communicating with other people. So it's always here. And the inner critic comes into being when we're very young, usually before the age of 3 or 4, and its messages often internalize the messages that we've received from our own caregivers, from our teachers, from culture. And if there were parts of ourselves that were wounded by those messages when we were younger, then that critic takes on a more extreme role. And as we get older, that role kind of gets more and more extreme and reified. And actually, what's needed for that part is some healing. And it was needing something at that particular stage of our development in childhood that it didn't get, like validation and encouragement and reminder that we can be loved by being who we are, and that it's okay to be who we are. And so there's some inner work that's required to reparent that part of ourselves so it can take on less of an extreme role and actually be an ally for us rather than something that is holding us back or antagonizing us.
That's helpful. Thank you. And can you say a little bit more about what it means to be an IFS practitioner?
I've been doing various forms of talk therapy for almost 30 years now, and talk therapy has been helpful, but ultimately it wasn't helpful in really getting to the root of some of these deeper patterns like the inner critic. And so what I find really helpful about IFS is it brings us into our internal system. and it allows us to bypass the cognitive rational mind and go into the unconscious, which is where these deep patterns are laid in. And it trusts the system, and it trusts our own individual guidance rather than looking for answers from the outside, or kind of advice or instructions from the outside, which can only go so far. Ultimately, what really changes us, what really transforms us, is when the illumination happens within us, when we have the insight within us. So, as an IFS practitioner, that is what I do. I hold space for individuals to go inside, to get to know these more challenging parts, and to receive guidance from them, to build a relationship with them, so that ultimately their own system can show the way to creating more harmony and equilibrium, rather than me just sitting and talking to them and telling them how to do it. So it ends up being very deep meditative experience. It kind of has a shamanic quality at times, just with the profound healing that can happen through unfreezing and releasing these younger wounded aspects of ourselves that are kind of frozen in time during periods in our life where they didn't have the support that they needed.
Mm, that's fascinating. And so, what are some of the elements in the retreat? There'll be meditation, there'll be some yoga, and how do these interrelate with the kind of psychological concepts you talked about?
All of my retreats include these dimensions, like you mentioned, include the meditation. We do sitting meditation, we do walking meditation, lying down meditation, and we do yoga, both kind of like a slow flow yoga and a yin, more of a passive held yoga, and also work in dyads, because a lot can be illuminated when we're actually in conversation with people, not in a pedestrian type of conversation, but a conversation where we're speaking from these deeper parts of ourselves. We're really being heard. Space is really being held for us. Journaling, and I give some Dharma talks on these different teachings. And all of these combine just to help to create an atmosphere for these deeper truths within us to surface, especially when we just step away from the responsibilities of our lives. We step away from, even though we do it over Zoom, just I encourage people to stay off their email, to turn off notifications on their phone, and then these deeper wisdom, this greater capacity for healing surfaces.
What part of your journey led you to lead these particular kind of retreats, or what experiences have brought you to this particular place?
These are all elements that I love, and I think I really discovered the combination of these elements in my 20s, and I found that all of these things, yoga, meditation, journaling, silence, nature, retreat time, the Dharma, like these wisdom teachings, spiritual community, psychological tools, all of those things combined were really what helped me find the sweet spot in me. And so these are the tools that have really helped me to heal and to grow over the years. And that as I've worked with other people, with many groups around the world for the past 20 years, it's just kind of a magic combination that always ends with people feeling deeply connected to themselves and to life around them. And I know I'm not the first to put these all together. These are really ancient practices, ancient modalities, and they work for a reason.
Well, you just answered in a way my next question, which was to be, since people have been locked down and in pandemic mode for such a long time and things are opening up a little, how can we entice a person to do an online retreat when it's, we can now get out and go to the local yoga studio, but there's all these other options that you're also offering?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean I totally hear that, and I know we all have screen fatigue, Zoom fatigue, and I really advocate for us all to take regular retreats. And I think what I've found being a participant of online retreats during the time of this pandemic is that it's just easier for me to do. There's not the cost of needing to travel somewhere and pay for accommodations and get get support at home while I'm away. It's so at that like cost level, energy expenditure, it can just do it in the comfort of one's own home. You can like I can do my laundry while I'm taking a retreat, or it's just sleep in my own bed, cook my own food. And while it is nice sometimes to go away, it is also sweet to do a home retreat and to be in the privacy of your own space, but to still have the container of a retreat, the supportive community, the teachings. So I think it's a really great opportunity for those who are feeling like they need it, even though we can go out now. And in some ways, we need retreat now more than ever because it's a lot to come out of this pandemic and to be reintegrating into life. And so a short weekend retreat is a nice kind of recalibration to help us to still stay connected with ourselves as we're expanding out as well.
Thanks so much for framing it in that way. Like, I haven't really thought about it as being it's affordable, it's comfortable, and it's also really supportive with all of the changes and trauma that people have been through recently. It's a real gift to yourself. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for offering this opportunity and for talking to us today about your work and the retreats that you lead. Did you want to offer a short guided practice for us today?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So I invite us all just to go ahead and close your eyes. And we'll first just take a few cleansing breaths, inhaling through your nostrils. And as you exhale, just release any stagnant energy in your body, in your mind, even just whatever you were doing before you found yourself here watching this video, hearing these words. Sometimes when we're scrolling on technology, we can get in a bit of a mental fog. So inhaling deeply and exhaling, just clearing out that fog. We'll take one more of these clearing breaths. And one more exhale. I invite you just to connect with your natural breath as it moves in your belly, in your body, in your being. Start to become aware of sounds around you, both in the room that you're in and beyond that room. And then I invite you to call to mind the last time that you remember, or maybe a big incident that you remember when your inner critic was active. And it might have been earlier today, it might have been last week, last month. Maybe something happened and a part of yourself started criticizing you, ridiculing you, shaming you. Take a moment and find that incident or that memory. Could have been something very subtle or something more extreme. And as you remember that, just sense where you feel that part, that criticizing part in or around your body. Once you sense that in or around your body, notice what it feels like sensationally. What sensations are there? Is there a temperature, a color, an image? And see if you can be with that, be with those sensations in that part of your body or around your body. And if you don't notice anything, that's okay too. You can just stay focusing on your breath, hearing my words. But if you are noticing those sensations, now just check in with yourself and notice how you feel towards that part in that particular part of your body or around your body. And if you feel anything other than curiosity, compassion, that means that another part of you has stepped in. Like if you feel anger, frustration, or something else, those are other parts that are present. And see if you can ask those parts if they'd be willing just to step aside. They could sit at your feet, they could sit next to you, just so you can really get to know this critical part a little bit better. Go ahead and ask them and see if they'd be willing to step aside. And if they're not willing, that's okay. You can just stay breathing with those parts. We really want to honor them. But if they are willing to step aside, and just check in with that part, that critical part again. And just notice if there's curiosity or compassion present now. And when and if curiosity or compassion is present for this critical part, just go ahead and ask this part, what role do you play in my life? And see what it says. You can ask it, what are you afraid would happen if you didn't do this job of criticizing me? And see what it says. You can ask it for how long it's been doing this job. And then ask it if it likes this job of criticizing you. If it doesn't like this job, ask it if there's something else it would rather be doing. And then you can thank this part for helping you to get to know it a little bit better. Maybe you've learned some things about it that you didn't notice before. Just notice what it's like for you to learn those things about this part. And if there are other parts that stepped aside so that you could connect more with this critical part, just thanking those parts for stepping aside. And then again, noticing your breath and your belly, noticing the sounds in the room that you're in. And when you feel ready, you can slowly open your eyes and start to take in the colors and the shapes, the light in the room that you're in. So, how was that for you, Dee?
Wow, I think I learned something that the inner critic is has something of a protective principle in it.
Uh huh.
It's trying to protect me from embarrassing myself or making mistakes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that
It's
how
very,
interesting.
yeah, very common. And so, if we were to go deeper, or like when we go deeper in this weekend, what we also start to uncover is the parts of us that the critic is protecting. And then when the critic doesn't feel like it needs to protect those vulnerable parts of us, then it gets um, it gets less extreme.
So
Yeah,
you're freeing up energy to do something else.
yeah, more vitality and just playfulness, creativity, joy.
I
Yeah,
love that. Well, thank you so much again, Sarah, and all the best to you in this retreat and hopefully many more to come.
thanks so much.